Hey, Sarah here at Silk Road Catalyst, and I am one of our newest board members. I am going to have the privilege today of getting to interview our president, the illustrious Steve Schirmer. So let's get started. While I do have an idea of what we do here at Silk Road Catalyst, I know there's a lot that happens outside of our board meetings and our conversations there. So I just have a few questions that I wanted to ask you today. Steve, is it possible for people to do more damage than good in their efforts in global missions?
Hey, thanks, Sarah, for starting off our question and answer episode with a great question. And here's how I want to answer it. Absolutely. And one of those areas where we can do more harm than good is in our efforts by some, and I'm not talking about everyone, but by some in the way that they share the gospel. Because I have seen it over and over, a number of people sharing the gospel, and really the goal on their part is to get someone to pray the sinner's prayer. Now, I love the sinner's prayer, and it is a prayer that I use as a guide when leading someone to Christ. But simply uttering the words does not save someone, and we don't want to give anyone a false sense of eternal security. The second way I want to answer this question is how we enter the mission field. Because if we go in with this heart or this attitude that I know better than you do, and I'm here to fix whatever problem I'm there to solve, then we've walked in with the wrong attitude. In 2015, I went on my very first trip to South Asia. I was in this large city. I was meeting with my host when he asked me during one of our meals, "Do you want to preach at my church on Sunday?" Now, naturally, I was thinking, why not? But my response was, "Does your pastor want me to preach on Sunday?" And he replied back, "It doesn't matter. Every American that comes to visit us demands that they preach at our church on Sunday, so our pastor just gives them the pulpit." And the way I see this, that when an American or Westerner or anyone walks in and demands that they get the pulpit for that church, it is telling the congregation their pastor is not a strong enough leader to lead their church. And yes, that can be damaging.
What has changed, especially for the better, in global missions over the past, say, 50 years?
When you look at missionary data from 1990 to today, you see that in 1990, the vast majority of missionaries globally were Westerners. But when you move forward to 2020, you begin to see that over 60% of all global cross-cultural missionaries are from the global south, and that is Latin America, Asia, and Africa. Another way things have changed, at least in my opinion, is that tent making has become more, you could say, involved. Now, I'm not saying it's a new concept. It's definitely not a 21st century concept, because you can go back to Scripture, to Paul the Apostle, and find the first tent maker. But now, more than ever, people are utilizing jobs, careers, and skills to engage in the mission field. Another one of these changes is the rate and speed by which peoples are moving globally. I mean, you go to any major city, or any city really, large or small, around the world, and you will see the nations at a doorstep. It is no longer necessary for Christians to go thousands of miles away to serve an unreached people group. But I want to give this one caution. God still may be calling you to go 1,000 miles away to reach an unreached people group. But regardless of whether He's calling you or not, the nations are largely at our doorstep.
What have been some of the most damaging efforts and ideologies that you've seen happen in global missions in your lifetime?
Sarah, thank you for asking this important question. And the one that tops my list is what's known as the insider movement. Now, some of you are not going to know that term, insider movement. So let me define it by giving you an example. Let's say you are a missionary and your job is to go to, let's say, a Muslim context, because in my experience with insider movement, it is most often applied in Muslim context. Now, it can be applied in Buddhist, Hindu, or any other context, but is most often applied to Muslim context. And so you go to this Muslim community, you engage a family with the gospel, you lead that family to Christ. But instead of forming a church or leading them to an existing church that might be nearby, you encourage them to keep their Muslim identity. You encourage them to go to the mosque 5 times a day and to pray. And I'm not talking about praying to Christ. I'm talking about using Islamic prayers, the words of the Islamic prayers, and praying alongside your Muslim community. Because what I've been told by those who practice insider movement, it's not the words that you say, but the heart that's behind it. And then some will even go further to say, if you actually look at Muslim prayers, they're not actually about praying to a Muslim God. Can you see why I have a reservation about this? And while there are many varieties of insider movement and how it is ultimately practiced, because not everyone is 100% in alignment, I have yet to hear one argument, one defense for the insider movement that makes it biblical, or that could even make it sound even somewhat biblical. And while I do strongly disagree with it, as is obvious, I have met insider movement people. Some of them really do have good intentions, but I do believe the approach is unbiblical and does not need to be used.
What is the best heart posture for a person to take before they're embarking on a mission trip or even lifetime missionary work?
The simple answer is we need to walk in with a heart to learn. In 2013, I went on my very first trip to Kyrgyzstan, and I was meeting with this national pastor. And during some of our meetings, he said this: American missionaries need to stop coming to Kyrgyzstan with their 5-year plans and their know-it-all attitudes. Let that sink in a bit. And so I asked him, what do we need to do? And he replied back, just come with an attitude to learn. Now, I do believe we can enter a mission field with plans, even a 5-year plan if that's what we have. Because the plan itself is not the problem. It's the heart that we walk in with that could potentially be the problem. If we're walking in with this attitude that I'm coming in there to fix all the problems that we're there to serve, well, yes, that is a problem. Yes, we're there to serve. Yes, God has given us a calling. I don't doubt that. But first and foremost, we need to walk into these mission fields with a heart to learn.
Where in the world is God at work right now in ways that might completely surprise us?
All right, the final question. And I'm going to give you a 36,000-foot view of what God is doing in this world because I love answering this question. Number one, the world's largest churches are not in the West. They are in Africa and Asia. Number two, Christians in countries like Malawi, Nigeria, and across the global South, their countries are transforming from a mission field to a mission force. And I'm not talking about their being mobilized to be indigenous missionaries to reach their own people, because guess what? Many of them, they're already doing that. They're being mobilized to go globally in the same way that Americans go to Asia, Africa, and other parts of the world as missionaries. Number three, the fastest growing churches in the world, if you were to break it down per country, are in China, Iran, and in countries in Africa. And the last thing I'll share is that the Nigerian Evangelical Association in Nigeria has a goal to send out 50,000 missionaries around the world and across Nigeria. And already in 2020, they have mobilized and sent 15,000.
Well, thank you, Steve, for answering all of my questions. A whole lot, and I hope you did as well. And don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to our channel because there's a lot of great content coming. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.